Thank you very much. I grew up in Heidelberg. I was in a hostel, and we had 3 preachers, 2 long ones and 1 short one, and they used to put a slab like this for the short one. I'm on the short preacher's slab, so I'm very tall today. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to talk about something completely different. How does going green, looking at the environment, look for the transport industry? I'll start off by saying, what is the global environment we operate in? And the global environment is driven by 3 C's. The first C, if it will work, is change. We're living in a world that is continuously changing, and you can't say, I've changed, now I'm finished. As you change, you continue to change. Secondly, we're living in a world which is totally complex. The previous speaker spoke about it. We have a block of data. We have a massive amount of data. How can we transform that data into information? Otherwise, it means nothing. In transport, we used to have traffic surveys, and we did it once every 5 years. Now you can track a person on a cell phone, so you can actually know what all your commuters are doing. But how do you convert that into proper information? And then secondly, it's very complex, and all the traditional methods. If you talk to the economist, in the olden days, the handbook said if this goes up, that goes down. Now it just does anything it likes. And the third one is competition. So we are constantly living in competition. In the old days, if you had a competitive advantage, you most probably had it for a few years. Now you have it for a few days. While you go to bed, the guy in Japan or in China is trying to work a plan to make it quicker, faster, get it to the market, and make it better. So if one looks at transport in the future, for future cities, transport will be driven by 3 things: by globalization, by congestion, and by the environment requirements. And all of that comes together in the cities. If you look at this map, this is the urbanization of the different areas. The red dots are mega cities with more than 10 million people, and as you can see, the world is going mad in terms of that. We calculate by 2025, which is just around the corner, 60% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. Rapid urbanization and economic development will increase the demand for the movement of people, goods, and services. Global trends toward private vehicle use as the preferred mode of transport, and in South Africa, that is also happening. We will have 6.2 billion private motorized trips per day in the cities, which is going to lead to gridlock, pollution, road traffic accidents, and a greater dependency on fossil fuels. We've calculated that if we don't do anything to the Gautrain, to the Gauteng transport infrastructure, in 25 years' time, the average speed of our freeways will be 12 kilometers per hour. So remember, in the end of the century, of the 19th century, London had horse-drawn carriages, and the average speed in London was 18 kilometers per hour. So you can buy yourself a horse, it'll be better than the car. We see that if left unchecked, we will have about 25% higher greenhouse gas emissions from transport. It'll put us firmly on the path of catastrophic climate changes. Transport energy bills will skyrocket. High levels of energy consumption could pose a threat to global energy security, and traffic congestion will bring cities worldwide to a standstill. And we'll kill about 500,000 people in the cities with road accidents. These are all scary numbers. Motor vehicles are, at the moment, pumping in 250 million, 1/3 of a billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is 20% of the world's total. Motor vehicles are contributing about 72% of the nitrogen oxides and 52% of the reactive hydrocarbons. As you know, the carbon dioxides are the greenhouse gases that keep the radiation trapped in the atmosphere and causes global warming, and carbon monoxide is the one that kills you if you get too much of it. So, what do we do about it? If we want to solve this problem, or actually address this problem, we have to make 3 shifts. we have to shift as much as possible people from motorized transport to non-motorized transport. We have to shift as much as possible people from private car use to public use. And we have to shift as much as possible people from roads to rail. These three shifts, if you don't make it, you aren't going to make it as a city, you aren't going to make it as a country. We have to do it through intelligent transport systems, so we have to do things smarter, we have to bleed the assets that we have, and we have to use renewable energy sources. So this diagram just shows the biggest contributor to climate change. The cars are much higher, and then industry, buildings, electricity, agriculture, and waste. So this is the impact that we make on the system, and we're the biggest contributor. And if you look at it, in this diagram, cars are 76% of the problem. And I'd like to show you, put in very small rail. Let's go back to it. The rail, only 2%. So this is a model that every city will have to go. The top priority must be walking and running. Secondly, cycling. Thirdly, utility bikes. Fourthly, passenger transport, which is rail-based. Then taxis, transport, car sharing, car owners, and then flying. So this is the diagram that we have to aspire to. Now, I can of course say, it's fine to say, let's use non-motorized transport. Tshwane's center of gravity of its population is 42.5 kilometers to the north of Pretoria, of the Pretoria CBD. So I went and when Mayor Sputla Ramagobo was still mayor, I showed him this, and he said, man, it's a good slide, but I can't have the people walking 42.5 kilometers in and 42.5 kilometers out every day. So it means if land use doesn't come together with transportation planning, we are dead. Urbanization, this is quite an interesting thing. Urbanization in Europe, in the USA, Far East over the last century have created mega cities like London, Paris, Berlin, New York, and they've developed into the economic engines of their countries. They have become centers of excellence. The Ile-de-France province, in which Paris is, produces 56% of the GDP of France. They've become magnets that draw in talent, funding, and innovation from all over the world. The more successful they become, the greater the rate of urbanization and growth in population is. Generally, from the economic perspective, it's been a massive success. In Africa, we've actually had the inverse. Urbanization has happened at a faster pace, but the new mega cities have become dysfunctional. If you take Lagos, Lagos has become an economic drain in the city, and Lagos is a city core with a ring of squalor around it. The question is, why did urbanization in Europe work, but not in Africa? And the answer is, in the rest of the world, infrastructure was extended to match the growth. So as the population expanded, the infrastructure expanded. In Lagos, we had a population of 2 million, and we had an infrastructure 20 years ago. Now we have the same infrastructure. Now we have 20 million people, and now you have a problem. So if you can't grow the city, the infrastructure of the city as the city grows, you have a problem. As we speak here today, Gauteng will get 547 people moving from the rest of South Africa to Gauteng every day. So every day of the week. Over the weekend, if you go away, there's 1,000 more people from South Africa coming to. So if one looks at the South African cities, our cities we have had quite a unique past. We had spatial distortion as a result of apartheid planning, resulting in the poor being moved far away from where they work. So the home work trip is a very expensive one. Overseas, the poor live next to the factories, so the home work trip is not such an issue. In our country, it's a massive issue. When I was still head of Department of Transport, and it's actually still happening now, we are moving people from the old Kwandebele to Tshwane every day. 194 kilometers is the longest trip, 194 kilometers. So we move people 400 kilometers a day. you can do the math on how much time that they spend more time on the bus than what they spend in the work. Access to basic services are expensive. The creation of dormitory towns with very little economic activities. In transport, the thing that you'd want to do is to send a mode of transport in one direction and then bring it back filled. In our country, you fill it up, you move it to work, then it goes back empty. Then you have to wait for after work to then take the people back. So there's only one-way traffic. All these factors have contributed to a situation of a lifelong dependency on various forms of subsidy that have to be paid to try and make it work. This is quite an interesting slide. You will see the population of Cape Town. In 1995 was 700,000. It's now grown to 3.6 million. All right? And the current water crisis in Cape Town is a case in point. The population has grown by 419% over the last 60 years. Cape Town is dependent on water from the following 5 dams. The Berg River Tunnel, that was built in 1976. Steenbras Dam, 1928. The Theewaters Kloof in 1990. The Voelvry Dam in 1971. The Wemmershoek, built in 1953. After 1980, no major dam was built. But after that, Cape Town grew by 132%. And now we have the nice South African salute. Everybody's blaming somebody else. But we have a crisis. And we have a crisis because the infrastructure does not keep pace with the growth in the population. Gauteng is a global city region. We have made a call that Gauteng will grow as a global city region. We have 3 metropolitan areas touching each other. If you look at a functional transport area, the functional transport areas with 3 metros are actually running into each other. And we will now focus on public transport to link these areas together. And the Premier has announced that we will create a transport authority. The Act has been written. The bill is now busy going to the legislature to be going through the process. We hope it will be promulgated by the end of this year, and then we'll create a transport authority on a provincial level to coordinate this. Green infrastructure. When one looks at green infrastructure, you really want to look at achieving one or more of these 5 objectives: safety, sustainability, efficiency, equity, and engagement. And remember, engagement is a very important thing. If one thinks about the e-tolls, the e-tolls is technically the best tolling system in the world. But Nazir lost the hearts and the minds of the people, and we've lost the e-tolls. So one must not try and ignore, and if you're an engineer, you usually think that's a soft issue. That soft issue killed a very good hard issue design. The need, in order to combat the negative effect of climate change, we must become more environmentally conscious, reduce the reliance on fossil fuels, and we have to become smarter. And we'll look at that. And that's fine. So what we're saying is that we have to, there's a business as usual approach where we have to just put in money to increase the infrastructure. Now we have to put in money for the infrastructure, but also to add in money to make it greener if it's going to cost you more. And this just gives you the benefits. Constraints, obviously constraints, there's the cost of investment. In a country like ours, we have very many demands on the fiscus, very demands on social services, health, education, welfare. So in the end, you would most probably have 100 good projects of which the government could only fund 15 or 20. So to support, and this is in America, they've said that to support future global population of 9 billion people, the estimated $5 trillion per year have to be spent in global infrastructure. There has to be an unprecedented shift in long-term investment that is required from the conventional to the green alternatives. Right. Investment for green, and this is just a schematic to show the type of money we're talking about. But I can say, I was sitting in front of my TV and the president came and he said, we're going to spend 3.2 trillion rand on the NDP. And I thought, my calculator hasn't got so many notes. But that's what we have to start spending to get to that. Opportunities for green transport. Rail transport, rail is identified as the backbone of the transport infrastructure. Low to zero emissions allow for this to be the cleanest transport mode in South Africa. With the Gautrain, our ridership is now 1.3 million passengers per month, so it's about 15 to 17 million passengers per year. Our buses transport about 400,000 passengers per month, and all of them Euro 4 standards, and the next set of buses we're buying will be Euro 5. BRTs, that we have 12 metros in the country now with BRTs. You can, of course, then utilize urban space much better, having fewer vehicles. Non-motorized transport, again, we developed a 25-year integrated master plan for Gauteng, and one of those is to say, let's build non-motorized transport. And the 3 metros have undertaken to do 200 kilometers per year of non-motorized transport areas. Maybe can I just say, those of you that have been to South America, the people who lay out the cities there, they made very broad streets, 400, 300 meters wide. So you can, next to the street, you can then have in parks and places where you can walk and places where you can cycle. In South Africa, we have very narrow road reserves, so you have to physically build it, and you have to build quite a nice barrier between you and the taxis, otherwise the taxis are going to make a bit of trouble. So in closure, traditional urban design, in tribal wisdom amongst North American Indians say that when you discover you are riding a dead horse, the best policy is to dismount it and leave it. In traditional urban design, however, other strategies are suggested, and they include buy a stronger whip, appoint a committee to study the dead horse, visit other sites, this I like, visit other sites, preferably overseas, to see how they ride dead horses, change requirements. This is also what's happening with the people that say we don't have global warming. We just say, we declare this horse is not dead. We can, of course, hire contractors or consultants to ride the dead horse. We can redeploy the dead horse, which I think happens quite often. We can blame the dead horse's performance on past policies and management. We can hold public consultation to determine how many dead horses the community want and where the first should be delivered. And then harness several dead horses together to increase the speed. Provide additional funding to improve the dead horse's performance. Form a quality circle to find uses for dead horses. And then the one I like most, promote the dead horse to a supervisory position. So please don't stick to urban planning. I'd like to end off by quoting a communist. Karl Marx said, the philosophers had only interpreted the world. The point here is to change it. So let's not have a conference about it, let's do it. And if I can quote a communist, I might as well quote a capitalist. Ronald Reagan said, the future is not for the faint-hearted. Thank you very much.